Hey guys, thanks for tuning in. This is tutorial number 7 on our series of learning C programming by coding. Now in this tutorial, we're going to learn how to determine the variable sizes. In the previous tutorial, we've seen a couple of variables. Definition, when we declare them, we've seen int, we've seen double, we've seen char. Now in this tutorial, we're going to introduce a new type of variable, namely the float variable. Now what are all these variables? We know that int is for integers, for whole numbers, and double is for number with a comma separated values, basically large numbers, and the float is equally the same. Char is for representing string letters in your C program. Now before we continue, please don't forget to subscribe to CMTEQ channel and give this tutorial a thumbs up if you find it useful. Now what are variable sizes in C programming? We know that when we're dealing with C programming or any programming languages, we are writing code that are going to be translated, into machine code. So what it means is the size of the variable is actually the amount of memory that the compiler reserves when the programmer declares a variable. So when we are declaring a variable, for instance, if I say int a, like that, I've declared a variable of type int and the variable name is a. So what it means is the compiler is already allocated an amount of memory to hold this variable, and the data that will be assigned to it. For instance, I can later say a is equal to 10. So all of that needs space in the memory. So the size of the variable, rightly so, depend on the type of the variable. Some variable will take a bigger size based on the type. Like obviously a double will have a bigger memory space allocation than the int. And in C and C++, there is a function called sizeof. Now these functions take one parameter, and the parameter will be the variable type, and what it does, it will return the size of the variable. And this function here, sizeof, is located inside the stdlib, the standard library. So in this tutorial, we're going to call this function to know what are the variable sizes that we just declared there. Now without wasting any further time, let's get coding. So for the variable int, let's just change the declaration name here. We're going to say int type. So what it means is the variable name is of type int. We just want to illustrate it here. And then here we're going to say double type. For the char, we're also going to say char type. The same will be done for the float type. So these are all the variable types. Now to display the variable sizes, once again, we're going to make a call for the printf function. So we're going to just put in a comment into our program. So we're going to say function sizeof evaluate the size of a variable. So function sizeof evaluate the size of a variable. So we're now going to call that function inside our print function so that we can display the size of the int, double, and char. So for the first time, we're just going to modify this one here. We're going to say the size of int. Now here we're going to introduce a new format specifier that is used to print the size of the variable, and that is ZU. So the format specifier ZU will be used to pass the value that will be returned by the function sizeof. and the values are going to be returned in byte, because you know when we're talking about program memory, we are talking about byte. Okay, so which means we're just going to include byte here. So we're going to say size of. So what do we want to include there? Size of int type. Okay, now we know that the int type here have been declared as int. We can replace anything here. This is just a variable name, but we know that it was declared under int. So which means automatically this function here will be returning the variable int type size, and it will assign the value based on this format specifier here. We can also use a %d. It will still be fine. There won't be an error, but ZU here is the correct way of assigning the value returned by the sizeof function. So from here on, we can then just go ahead and copy this code here, because you don't have to type the same code over and over. If you know that, you can just copy it. So we've got 4 print function here. We can just modify. So from here, we're going to say the size of double. Okay. %ZU byte size of double type. And we move on to the next one. The size of float or car %ZU byte size of car type. And the last one, printf, the size of float %ZU byte size of float type. There it is. Now we can run this function and we should be expecting the return of the memory location in byte of all these functions. So expect big numbers. So let's run this program and see what we get. There it is. So we've got the size of int gives us 4 byte. The size of a double gives us 8 byte. As you can see, it's double. The size of a car is only 1 byte. The size of a float gives us 4 byte. Now while we are here, it's important to note that bytes are used to denote the size of memories. So if you see here, so we've got bits, nibble, byte, kilobyte, megabyte, gigabyte, etc. So many of you might already be aware of kilobyte, megabyte, and gigabyte, etc. in terms of memory sizes, storage, or even data sizes. For instance, here the size of an int is 4 bytes. So it means that since a byte is equal to 8 bits, so a 4 bytes will then be equal to 8 times 4. As you can see, it's going to be 32 bits. This is why they say in C programming, an int is equal to 32 bits. And a long will then be equal to 8 times 8. So that will be 64 bits and so forth. So all of these are how memory are structures in your memory allocations in C programming and many other programming languages. So that will be it for this tutorial. And once again, don't forget to give a thumbs up and subscribe to CMTEQ channel. Until next time, cheers.